Welcome to day 3, gentlemen, of our final installment of the summit. I do recognize a couple of the names. My apologies if you have been here before, but I do want to mention that if this is your first session, that we have recorded all 3 days, and tomorrow we will be sending out a recording via email of each day for those who may have missed a session at some point. So know that you will receive those tomorrow, but thank you very much for being here tonight for day 3. Tonight, Kayla and I, who, if you have not met us, you can learn more about us in the recordings, but we are bringing you tonight the element of fear and moving you from your fear energy to that of power and that of choosing from within, and making choices and using language and things of that nature to empower self and honor self to in your creation. Again, there is a wonderful picture of the two of us, so you're welcome for that. Gentlemen, I want you to start tonight's session by having a look at this quote from Mark Twain. Worrying is like paying a debt you don't owe. And I'd like you to share in the chat box, or if one of you wants to open up your mic and share what comes up for you when you read this quote. Anyone? Come on, guys. I'm slowed by dinner, maybe.
Martin says in the chat that worrying is not productive.
Absolutely, Martin. And that is where we're going with it. We're trying to, when we have a container of energy, or we have a capacity, worrying is a fear response, and worrying about something that hasn't even happened yet, whether it's based on lived experience or not, is much like Mark Twain says, it's like paying a debt you don't owe, something you just would never do. So worrying and creating that fear-based manner of creating is not serving at all. It doesn't empower you. It allows you to empty yourself of an energy that can be reserved and better served in other places. So with that said, we got some worrying can be distracting, take you away mentally from the main goal, which in itself is a debt. I like that. Like that, Peter. So Kayla's going to expand into fear, and then we're going to come back and talk around language and things of that nature. So take it away, Kayla.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt. Welcome again, gentlemen. Thank you for joining us for tonight's session. As Matt mentioned, on Tuesday, we started talking about the conversation in the context of what it means to be in survival mode, how to switch to creation mode, and then the bridge between the two of those, which is thriving. And yesterday, Nick talked about the 6 principles for health and how to really put some of those ideas into practice. Today, Matt mentioned we're going to be talking really about what this looks like from a tactical perspective. So I would invite everybody to have a notebook, to have a pen and paper, something to write on as we discuss some of these topics. Again, as Matt mentioned, we're going to be sending out the recording to everybody on Friday, tomorrow. So you'll be able to pause and complete some of these activities in more detail and more depth. The benefit from writing down your initial thoughts tonight would be to capture what comes up instantaneously when we talk about some of these topics. So have a notebook, have a pen, paper, something handy to write down on. So we're going to be starting the conversation around fears and why it's more important to identify some of those fears in relationship to our goals than what we may realize. The second point we'll be hitting on tonight is the hidden meaning that lies in our fears. And then as Matt mentioned, architecting our life using specific tangible words. So with that in mind, the first thing we're going to discuss is fears over goals. And one thing that I think is very prevalent and we all are well aware of is the time of year that we're in right now is that everyone's doing goal setting, or a lot of people are doing goal setting, or they're setting things that they want to accomplish in the next 6 months, in the next year. And it's great to set those New Year's resolutions and to have something that we're obtaining. But I think one thing that a lot of people forget or they don't realize is that sometimes there's something that's preventing them from accomplishing those goals. It could be discipline, it could be the knowledge, it could be something else. And one thing that's part of that is, what are the fears that are preventing you from taking action and doing the things that you want to do? So the question, as it says on the slide, is how can you achieve a goal that you aren't even afraid that you're afraid of stepping towards? So with that in mind, whether you want to unmute yourself or you want to type in the chat box, what is one of your goals that you are currently working on? One or multiple? Again, unmute yourself or you can type it in the chat. And this could be financially, it could be personally, it could be professionally, whatever goals come to mind of something that you're like, you know, that's something I'm wanting to achieve. That's something that I'm working on moving towards. And what are some of your goals? Martin says starting a business. Thanks, Martin. He says he's gone back to school to get an advanced business degree. Awesome. Peter, one of his goals currently is training his body for the SFE in October, excuse me. Awesome. Good. So these are all goals that you guys are working towards and you're wanting to achieve them. There's something that's important to you. Now, my next question would be, what are some of your fears around achieving that goal? What are some of your fears around training your body, your mind for the SFE in October? What are some of your fears around starting a business? What are some of your fears around going back to school to get an advanced degree? Are there any thought patterns? Are there any conversations you have to yourself in your head about your ability to do so, or thoughts that come up? Again, you can unmute yourself. You can type in the chat box. Yeah, Q says time management. Keys, are you unable to unmute yourself with where you're currently located? Yes, awesome. So Keys, tell me a little bit about your goal and tell me a little bit about your fear. Expand on it in whatever way you would like. I'll assume you're currently unavailable. Is there anybody else that would like to have a conversation about their fear and what their current goal is? Martin, go for it.
Yep, probably similar to Keys. It's time management or finding a time to start thinking what type of a business, and there's a few ideas in the head, but with respect to the responsibilities, you know, being employed by a company, corporation, having a family, finding a time to put the time aside and find the niche as to what I like to do. So that's the biggest challenge, right? And it's been a challenge for quite some time, where time's ticking, it's not coming back. Can't look back, but there's still a lack of a time to find, challenging to find a time to actually to find that thing that I would like to do. It's probably most of the problems, right?
What I hear you saying, Martin, is that your goal is you want to start a business. Your fear is time management. How am I going to have the time to do this when I have a family and I have other employment?
Yeah, you gotta, at the end of the day, I wasn't in business in the past. So once you have a business, that business is your baby, right? And I have 3 babies home or 3 kids home. So it is that, how do I reconcile that? I need to put the time in it. I'm not getting any younger. That's my goal that I'd like to achieve in my life. How do I square myself up being currently responsibly as running a plant for a global corporation, same time trying to find a niche as a business that I'd like to be in while still supporting the family, right? So I wouldn't say it's a fear. It's more of a, how do I make it work?
Yeah, because to some extent, if I heard you correctly, the fear is, if I put all this energy and time and attention into starting this business, the fear is, what happens to my family? What type of father am I? What type of role model am I? Right. So I understand exactly what you're saying. And I'm sure many men can relate to that, right? If I divert my attention from one to the other, there could be a cost for that. And is that cost worth the sacrifice? Right. So that is the fear that's associated with it. And how is that fear showing up in you taking action on what your goal is? Are you taking action on it? Do you feel like you're really hesitant? Do you feel like you're thinking about it, but there's not much doing that's happening? Or what do you notice?
I've had some last year. I've had some daily goals, which were, or the weekly goals with respect to the business, was just come up with one idea, write it down, explore the idea, don't judge the idea, almost like a brainstorming for yourself by myself, and then see where it's going to land. And I've tracked it last year, and it was trailing well at the beginning of the year, and then things kind of fell apart for various reasons. So, is it in part due of a lack of time, or my old time management, or responsibilities elsewhere as the job as well as the family? So it's kind of all in combined.
Yeah. So what I want everyone to do that's here, thank you for sharing, Martin, is identify what is your goal? What are you wanting to achieve, whether personally, professionally, physically, mentally, whatever that goal is that you're working to achieve. Once you have that goal identified, or goals identified for you, identify any fears you have in relation to accomplishing that goal. It could be time management, as Martin said. It could be fears around, what type of person am I if I actually accomplish this? Am I stepping away from what I want? That perception of identity that comes along with it. Get really clear on what those fears are, and write down as many fears as come up and resonate for you as you start to generate them. The second part of that, or the third part I could say, is identify what's the root of the fear. Is that an internal fear, or is it an external fear? So Martin, going back to your example, the fear of, if you spend all this time working on the business, of not having time with your family, then is that an external fear, an internal fear, or both? How would you categorize it?
I think it would be a bit of both. I joined the first session on Tuesday late, and I joined into the sentence when Jen was talking about the 99% of our fears are in our head, which correlates really well with me. I like to think of myself as an overthinker. So I think definitely it's internal. External to some degree, sure, I'd like to provide time as a father to my kids and my family, right? So I think a bit of it both. I think it's more internal than external, I would say so.
Perfect. And because of that internal fear, where do you think it resonates from? And I ask this to everyone, like, as you look at your goal, as you look at your fear, and as you identify where that fear originates from, is it within you? It's something that you've created this belief around doing it, or is it something that somebody else has spoken to you and you've taken it on as yourself? Look back and see, where have those fears originated for you? Was the seed planted at a certain age, Martin, that you should be a certain type of father? And if you spend less time with your kids, that means something about you. Like, when was the seed for whatever a person's fear was originally planted? Because a lot of times these beliefs, these ideas, these fears are given to us as children by adults who typically mean no harm. It's just their own fears that they're expressing. And we take on those fears as our own because we know nothing else and we're malleable individuals and we trust the adults in our life. So we hear what they say and then we take it on as something that we need to do as well. These beliefs that we take on.
Yep. And I think it's a little bit of all. I think it was the first session someone put on a chat about a book, No More Mr. Nice Guy, and really good book. And I find myself in the guy number 3, which pretty much, and I can't sell that I'm the recovering Mr. Nice Guy, many years. And it has to do with the parents' upbringing, you know, being brought up in very strict environment, where you need to be behaving as per parents' expectations to be the good guy or be the, you know, be worthy of love. And I think that's everything stems from. Then, you know, I still felt for a long time that I need to fit within a certain bill that maybe society expected of me to be, as opposed to just be me, right? So, and you know, the programming as being a child or kids, it's very strong. You know, the first, I would say, 7 years, they say it's absolutely paramount, and it's the blueprint for our own future and how we're going to be bringing up. So 20 years of me being brought up a certain way took me another 20 years to undo to some degree, and the work still continues, right?
Right. And the process is speeded up when you identify it, right? Like by going through these steps, by everyone on this call going through these steps of identifying their goals, identify what the fears are related to those. Is that an internal thing, an external thing? And then really figuring out, like, when was that seed planted? When did I start to believe that? Or where did that belief even come from? Is really important, because then you can go back and you can say, okay, is that what I currently believe now? Or is that what I was told when I was 7 years old? And now I just have happened to keep believing it for the last 27 years because I haven't had a reason to analyze it or to contemplate it or to decide something different. And that's the power of looking at our fears, is because then you have the choice to do something different with it, as opposed to living that same programming and believing those same fears that go along with it. Because in that same train of thought is, a lot of times, I would say we base our decisions based off of what could go wrong versus right? Those fears are perpetuating the cycle of, ooh, if I start this business and if I divert too much time to this, I'm suddenly not going to have time for my kids, right? When in reality, maybe you become better at managing your time, or you find a way to do it where it doesn't come to fruition as you originally anticipate, right? So getting really clear is, as everyone looks at their list, how do you base your decisions? When you think about the goal that you're looking to achieve, as you think about your fears that you have, how do you frame it up in your mind? Are you framing it up in your mind of, these are all the things that could go wrong, so I shouldn't do them, so I'm not going to take a step towards my goal? Or are you saying, hey, could happen and it could actually go really well, so why don't I just try it and see what happens, right? That's a very different thought pattern to exist in, and it changes your actions tremendously based off of where your thoughts are. So one thing to consider for everyone in their notebooks now or later is, how do you base your decisions? And are you coming from a fear state, what could go wrong, versus a power state, what could go right? If you're thinking about what could go wrong, you're really in that survival mode. If you're thinking about what could go right, you're living more in that architect, that creation mode, and you're more willing to problem solve. Now, going back to something that was, I believe, listed in the chat, there's lots of reasons in our mind why people have fears. And sometimes some of those meanings are things that we don't always realize, and some of them are things that we do realize. And I would argue that a lot of people are afraid of their own greatness. They're afraid of doing the thing.
Facts.
Who am I? David, is that you?
Facts. Yeah, that was me. I was just like, facts, that hit hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
shit,
we have
fuck.
this belief of, we don't want to show somebody up, or who am I to do that? I don't want somebody to think X, Y, and Z about me. So we limit ourselves and we play really small, and we just live within this little cage of our existence that we self-create.
Can I step in and add on that?
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, I think sometimes the biggest fear in success is getting what you want to find out it really wasn't what you wanted in the first place. And I know that's a huge drawback for some people, I know that's been a drawback on me on some goals that I've set and places that I've got to. And I was like, what if, this isn't really what I want? And then that really pulls the carpet out from under me, cuts me down, because it's like, fuck, what if I get there and it's not what I want? So that's all I got to say.
I think
Yeah,
that
and then-
speaks to, sorry.
Go,
Sorry,
Matt.
Kayla, I think that speaks to, David, not being in tune with your intuition of choosing herself. We do have, as Kayla said, there's this generational beliefs of ways of doing things, ways of navigating things I should do, I have to do, rather than, which we're going to get into in a slide or two, but that I choose to do from within, from the core of yourself. And when you've chosen out of fear or from that direction, from that upbringing, or the energy of, the ways our parents raised us, not actually being able to go inside at depth and figure out if that is the right thing for us. If we don't internalize it and we're choosing from an external source, we often find ourselves in that place where we're, oh, fuck, I didn't really want that, and it's because it wasn't actually your choice.
No, exactly. And if I could add on that, sometimes you get to where you want to go, but it feels too perfect for it to be real. So then that feeling of, wow, it just felt too perfect, so I got to run away.
Well, and then you
I don't know.
sabotage yourself, right? And
Yeah,
then
we
that's
do
where
that.
that
Yeah.
self-sabotage comes in. Exactly.
Yeah, people do that in marriages, relationships, jobs. They get there and they're like, whoa, too comfortable here. I'm going to go back to disaster or chaos because that's normal to me.
Well, and the only way to change that pattern is to interrupt it to some extent. And to interrupt it, you have to be willing to analyze it and look at it from a different perspective. You have to be willing to grow through that experience, because that's when you're really at the edges of your comfort zone. Ooh, I'm in an actual comfortable zone. This isn't what I'm used to. That's where you are really ready to grow, if you're willing to stay there. But a lot of people, like you said, they get uncomfortable and they want to go back to the familiar. Well, you don't grow in the familiar. There's no, just like working out in the gym, you don't grow your muscles by, only doing a little bit of work. You have to push it sometimes, and you have to work hard. And that's the same thing with other aspects of our life.
Yeah, exactly.
I saw, Martin, you raised your hand. Did you have a question or something to add?
Yeah, kind of to add, because how does contingencies fall into this genre? Because you kind of always, maybe that's fear-based too, but always want to have a backup plan or plan for the worst as well. I mean,
Well,
I wonder how much of the energy, right, that we're catering to contingencies could be turned towards or put towards the like you said, ask yourself what can go right.
Exactly. I'm someone who loves to have a plan. And I also recognize that if I have a plan A and a plan B, I'm directing attention, energy, focus, my effort towards plan B, even if that's not what I really want, which is diverting me away from my actual goal, intention, objective, dream that I want to achieve. And to some extent, I believe for myself, what I practice for myself is knowing, like, I'm going to be okay. Regardless of what happens, I believe to the core of my being that I'm going to figure it out. So how can I direct my attention towards plan A and know within me, I have the intelligence, I have the resources, I have the smarts, I have people that I can ask to for support and assistance, that if things go to hell, I'm going to figure it out. And divert as much attention as possible, as much mental real estate as possible towards the actual objective. Because otherwise, a part of me is playing small. A part of me is denying my own greatness. A part of me is thinking, ooh, Haley, you should have a backup plan. What if this goes haywire? Well, what if it doesn't, though? What if it goes really well? Does that speak to what you were saying, Martin, or is there something?
Yes, yeah, sort of. But I mean, I'm a photographer by trade, so for me, it's always always bring 2 cameras to the job, and there's always several lights that I have. Just from past experience, one light will break, and so I always plan in for those situations, right? Doing the job.
Right.
But I feel I treat my life like this too, right? But I hear you, and I appreciate that to turn this a bit on its head. My over obsessing of planning ahead, because there's a lot of things
Well,
I don't have influence on.
I think Martin can go back to that original quote by Mark Twain, though. Is it coming from within? So is it that intentional action to plan well, be ready for, based on your lived experience, be ready for, having a backup light, if a light breaks? Or is it worry? Like, is it actually fear-based energy that is depleting, and you're always on that upregulated state of, I know something's going to go wrong? Because in that, at least I believe in that law of attraction, where you will receive what you put out. And if you're sitting in that restricted space where you are in fear of something happening, it's more likely to happen. So, activating that, the difference between those two things, there can be very intentional planning, or is it fear-based worry?
I would also say, Martin, like, start small. Like, we don't want to play small, but start small in the aspect of choosing an area of your life where you could test having less backup plans. Whether it's dinner plans, whether it's gym, whether it's like some aspect of your life where you can practice having less contingency plans, and test out how it feels, and just start repping it. Because that's how you're going to build momentum to go in a different direction, if that's what's best serving for you, is by attempting it in small doses, to then build up the other side of the spectrum where you feel that you lack some of the confidence or the comfortability in doing that.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you both for the advice. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. This also goes back to what you were saying, Martin, is, the other hidden meaning that lies in our fears is also those thoughts that you were just speaking to, the thoughts that David was speaking to earlier, right? All that what if language, or the should language that we take on from our families or society, of all the things that we should be doing. And in reality, we don't know what's going to happen until we make a decision. And sometimes that's the hardest thing, but it's the most important thing that we have to do. We have to decide what we want. We have to decide to do something different, and let the cards fall how they will. But we don't know how things are going to play out until we choose. So something to consider is, where in your life are you currently not making a decision where a decision needs to be made? So with that in mind, we're going to go on to the first. We have a couple of exercises tonight. As I mentioned earlier, these exercises are going to start ruminating in your mind. My goal for you, Matt's goal for you, is to write down whatever initially comes up, and then come back to this later tonight, tomorrow, this weekend, whenever you have the time, to really flesh out the details that are true for you and how that's impacting your actions and your way of living within this life. So the first question asks, what were or what are the social, generational, and cultural constructions you were told from a child until today of who you should be and what you should do? And whatever comes up right away in your mind is something that you definitely want to jot down. If anybody wants to unmute themselves or write in the chat box and share with us, we'd love to have a conversation. But some of these seeds that were planted when you were a child and watered from constant exposure are things that are now influencing you for better or for worse as you grow into an adult, or as you are an adult. So being really clear on what those influences are, and then looking at them and saying, okay, like, this is what I was told. Is this what's serving me right now? Or is it keeping me from living my potential? Once you have awareness around these things, you can choose to do something different if that's what you want. But until you become aware of them, you're somewhat of a slave to them without your own knowing. Martin says acting according to societal expectations. Exactly. And what type of expectations would those be, Martin? Like what comes up for you?
So, I mean, in general, be a good person, do the good things, really think what in anything and everything you do, what the people are gonna say. Don't do what you feel in your heart, but what is expected from neighbors, family. Try not to hurt nobody by your actions, even though you don't mean bad or to do any wrong to anybody. Right?
Yep.
So, in certain societies or depending where people grew up in the world are more assertive than not. I was more raised in an environment that was more, I wouldn't call it aggressive, but more passive side. Right. So everything is the picture perfect family. Everybody is happy and polished and so on. And you need to do well according to societal expectations, almost like, right?
100%. So knowing that, my suggestion to you would be, because that was the beliefs that you were told from a child, how has that influenced you as you've continued to grow, and how has that influenced your actions? So something for you to consider and journal about would be, what's the consequence of believing that? And do you still believe that to be true today? Or is that still how you want to choose to act today?
No, I've made that change years ago.
Good.
And that was between me and my parents. So we it was clear from my end as to what I think. And again, I grew up in Europe, moved to Canada 20 years ago. So definitely very different environment, or slightly different environment. And also it helps me to move on the other side and recognize things that I couldn't see, because growing up in the environment, you pretty much limited, right?
100%.
So I think the ship has sailed, put it this way, but it's still subconsciously here and there, you have some of the resemblance of that. I mean, definitely I have to say on the terms of the self-esteem or self-confidence, it was a huge one, because, in that environment, we're not raised to be self-confident, stand up proud, and more like put the head down and just follow the crowd, right? So.
Yeah. So that could even go back to, how is any of that leaking still into you starting your business, time management, that kind of stuff?
I think so. I mean, subconsciously, there's,
Yeah.
like I said, like if anybody who was raised certain way and want to change 180 degree, and if you would ask my wife, she would tell you that I've changed 180 degree. I'm a different person that she knew me. It's impossible to change 100%. There is still a little resemblance in us subconsciously somewhere out there lingering, right?
Yeah. So being mindful of that as you make your decisions with your business, and making sure that everything is still in alignment with where you want to go, can keep you moving in that right direction. And so that some of those pieces don't leak in if they are finding their way through. Awesome.
Hey.
Thank you for sharing, Martin.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, go for it.
So I think one of the biggest things for me was going to school. I knew, like, after graduating high school and stuff, going to college, something wasn't for me. I had my mindset on opening my own business and everything. And one of the biggest, like, cultural things, I guess, was my dad came here from Italy as a young man. So we grew up in a very strict household, very European, like how Martin was saying. In a way, it was good, especially in like today's society. You see, as being a man, you see a lot of men these days who aren't really men. So in that way, I think that was a blessing. But the whole thing of like having to be forced to do something that I didn't want to do, knowing in my heart that it wasn't the right decision, and then keeping strong with that, even going through like the hurdles. So didn't go to school for a year and a half, was bothered. I worked in construction. saved money, made money. My dad pressured me to go to school. Went to school for 8 months. Ended up getting a job managing over 100 men, doing exterior finishing work. Basically made the decision to leave. Went back to the company that I was with before, managing these guys, then ending up opening my own company. But I went through like tons of dinners sitting with family and people telling me that I was crazy and that I was nuts for what I was doing, and that like I'll never make it. You need to go to school. You'll never be nothing. And I'm 26 years old. Proudly, I can say that I've ran a successful business for the past 4 years now. I've purchased a home. It's a duplex. I rent it out. I'm getting married in a year. And this is all from not listening to people, not listening to others' opinions, going with my gut, going with what my heart says, no matter how hard it is. And yeah, you bend and you go one way a little bit and you go the other way and you try and figure out where you're supposed to be, but your heart and your gut will always tell you the position that you need to be playing. And I found that has been my best friend, has been listening to that as hard as it is, even through COVID. That was another testament to that. Having my own set of beliefs and reasons for what I believed in, and dealing with family and society that was completely opposite of that, and still trying to hold strong to what I believe in, and like just believing in your gut, just trusting who you are, and just going through those testaments and just allowing those hurdles to create you, I think is very important.
100%. You're speaking to that internal compass, right? And using that to navigate your life as opposed to an external compass that somebody else has told you is important, that they themselves do or do not live.
Correct. Correct. And it's very hard for a lot of people, a lot of people. And
yeah, you're made to feel shitty for not doing what your family says or what society says is important, right? And you're made to feel guilty for choosing something different.
yeah, it's pretty crazy what we do to humans now. It's just life has just shifted in such a manner to where everybody's not like focusing on the bigger picture. Everybody's focusing on these little things that don't really mean anything in the construct of time. And we're becoming so distracted in all these little things that time just flashes by, and then we're wishing that we did this, we're wishing that we did that, because we never listened to our gut. We were so focused on the distractions and other people talking, other people's opinions, everything that's going on now with social media and the phones, and it's nuts. It's absolutely nuts. And I think that's where a lot of all these problems are coming from. Like I wrote, everyone's living in a reactionary state. Everyone is living life and just reacting to what's happening to them instead of planning a course of action, living that plan, dealing with the hiccups that come, but not folding or bending. Just be who you are, be what your mind tells you to be, your gut, no matter how hard it is. You're gonna go through the hurdles, trust me. I've dealt with my fair share of depression. COVID was a complete, total mentally on me, destroyed me. I'm not perfect, nobody is, but you just got to stay on the course. Just be strong, keep going, be emotional, cry, be honest, be loving, be loyal, go through the emotions, just stay on the path. Don't leave the course.
It's beautiful, Peter, and I appreciate that so much. And it speaks to, you're right, the environment that is the world, society, has created an energy that's so fast paced that it's really difficult to slow down and check in with, am I acting out of fear? Am I acting out of power? Where am I at? And then the next thing's hit you, the next thing's hit you, the next thing's hit you. It's at such a pace where it's really difficult to identify with self. And, we've spoke to a lot of these elements that you emphasized there over the last couple of days of, making sure that your holistic well-being is in check. You're hydrating, eating nutritious food, moving, sleeping well, all those things. So when this upregulated energy that keeps getting fired at us, we're able to continuously bring ourselves back down to,
And sleep is huge. Sleep is major. Like yesterday, I'm putting the dishes away and I pulled a muscle in my back. It was like 6:30. So you know what? Had a long day. I got nothing else to do. I said, you know, I'm gonna go to sleep because today I had a pretty long day at work. And I said, I gotta be like pretty well rested. Like I gotta be in shape. I can't have full back. Went to bed, slept it off, slept for 12 hours, woke up at 6 a.m. Felt perfect. Not perfect, but a lot better than I did. But when I went to sleep, sleep is key, man. People, I don't understand how people go to bed 1 o'clock in the morning, wake up at 6 o'clock, go to work, and function, think they're gonna last forever. It blows my mind.
well, and again, we spoke, Nick and Kayla spoke to it, you know, yesterday in regards to that. You know, once then you're activating and creating on 4 hours sleep every day, then you're gonna have to inject caffeine to keep that up. You're going to have to shift the other areas that you're trying to keep well to balance out that, and it all starts to crumble. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, sleep is an essential piece, but if one starts to fall off, it generally starts to cross the threshold.
Oh, yeah.
All of it.
That's for sure. For sure. Well, sorry guys, I won't take away the floor. You guys can go ahead.
No apologies. That was great. That was great. It does segue well though into, you know, this second exercise, which is, you know, back continuing in the theme of you know, shifting that power into your own inner power, away from that external fear-based energy that you can create from. Checking out this slide, guys.
Yeah, I just read it now. That's kind of funny.
Yeah, so speaking to the way we were brought up, or our generational energy that's injected into us every day from our parents, societal energy, all that, you know, it creates a fear, you know, that we may disappoint, we may let down, I may hurt someone, whatever language we want to attach to that. But the question for you guys is, if you knew no one would be hurt or disappointed, whatever word you want to plug in there, how would you choose differently for yourself?
That's huge. Like out of everything, that right there, that statement, that sentence is huge. That sentence right there will make you or break you in life, in the long run, in the marathon. That statement right there.
I just got goosebumps, Peter. It's amazing. It's and it's because you're feeling into that, you know, how often we choose to dishonor ourselves to honor those that we care about. When you are reflecting on, you know, I'm speaking to all the men, you know, your interactions with your children, what do we teach them? We teach them to honor themselves, to choose, you know, to make choices for themselves, to be creative, to be all those things. Yet when we look at ourselves, sorry, I'm not going to say all of us, I'm just saying there's a theme that when we look at ourselves, we're not doing that. We're creating to satisfy the energy of something external. So by empowering ourselves and creating that inner winner, by choosing, going into self, checking in with our body, checking in with our intuition, checking in with, is this right for me? Because if I'm not right, if I'm not whole and I'm not full, how am I supposed to create then externally with a healthy lens, a healthy perspective? How am I supposed to teach the next generation, my children, those people I care about, if I'm not honoring self?
Correct. Yeah, it's and I think a lot of people get scared in honoring self because they feel like with honoring self that no one else will honor them, and which is the complete opposite. People will honor you and love you more, but you may not be the people in your circle right now because those aren't the right people for you anyways, but you choose to neglect that and you don't want to see it. But when you make the choice for self and you see how other people start reacting, then you make your circle based on that, because the true ones will honor you for it.
Well, we've been told that it's selfish, you know,
Yeah,
you know, those types of things. And that, again, you know, a lot of this, as we've shared over the last few days, ties in to language, you know, what we tell ourselves. You know, I can easily choose, because I've told myself it's a selfish choice to choose me. But if we shift that language, I'm hurting me instead of hurting someone else. Like, it's like, well, what are you not the most important being in your existence?
Yep.
Everything starts with, it's not selfish, it's responsible to make sure you are whole and full, so you can then externally share that energy from a point of love, from a point of, creating from your own empowering energy. And again, just to tie off this slide, those tangible words of how you attach your language to what you're contemplating or what your choice is going to be in a moment. And in this example, we use the job professional space. I choose to keep my current job because it's secure. It's of its security and comfort are things that I value. It's a power-based driven, internal, intentional consideration. The language of it is empowering. It's coming from within. The second example is externally validated. I choose to keep my current job because I've been taught that pension and job security are important things to seek in a career. Now, those could also be, as you review your values and your, the moral compass that Kayla alluded to earlier, those can be important things to you, but check in with self and choose from within, not because dad told me I had to be a certain way, or not because, the upper management at my job told this is the way to do something. I mean, expansion comes from touching the edges, right? And dangling in that gray area that is often not explored. So, checking in between those two, ask yourself, you don't have to, if you want to share, but ask yourself when you are making choices around decisions and thoughts and considerations, which one of those two resonates for you in this moment. And while you're thinking about that, as I mentioned, when you are choosing from a space of power, you're contemplating, like, what are your values? Are you maintaining an integrity in your choice? When I'm choosing this, is it aligned with those values that I've established? We've mentioned honoring self. Once I disregard, so if I'm going to go out and establish my core set of values for myself, something I truly believe in, I can feel it in my gut, I can feel it in my soul that these are things I'm aligned with. And then I go off the line and I dishonor all of that, then you're losing integrity. And it's Peter, as we spoke to with that holistic whole being, starts to crumble. So you gotta be able to establish your values, choose from within, create from within, so then you can show up for the rest. We'll leave it at that.
Yeah, it's like you were saying, Matt, it's aligning the head and the heart, and a lot of times we're living from this head of what we've been told and who we should be, as opposed to embodying what's really true for us, our values and everything like that, which goes back to, are you living from a power state or a fear state, and how are you choosing and deciding that? So with that being said, we're going to open the floor for questions in just a moment to see if anybody has any questions. But we want to thank you guys for joining us for the 3 days of our Thriving Man Summit with the SFE. Day one, we really provided the context for why we would want to move from a survival to a creation mode and live a life of thriving. Yesterday, Nick talked about the physiological aspects of creating more thriving in your life. And today we really dove into a tactical session, giving you guys some exercises. Please come back to these exercises. We're going to send you the recordings tomorrow so you can go play the videos again, pause, contemplate them, see the questions, etc. And then you can live with more intentionality, which is what we really want. And you can architect your life as opposed to responding or reacting to what's happening around you. We just want to remind you guys that this is a snapshot of what we cover in the Thriving Man Academy. Matt put the link in there, the portal Owl practice, if you want to go and learn more about what the Thriving Man Academy is. We'll have sessions opened up for that so that you guys can learn more. It starts on February 6th. There'll be all 4 of us will be part of that. It's 12 weeks in length. If you're interested in joining, mention the SFE, you're going to get money off the course. But really, we also want you just to know that if you are interested in engaging in this type of conversation, whether you join us or you join other courses or groups, know that men are talking about these types of concepts. Know that men are exploring this. It may not be in your circle of friends or who you typically converse with or at work, but know that there are groups out there that are exploring these concepts and what it means for themselves as men and are moving forward with purpose and intention in their lives. And that's really what we want to get across to you. Please take everything that we've discussed these last 3 days and run with it. Implement it into your life and see what changes because of it. See what changes with your thoughts, see what changes with your actions, see what changes with your beliefs and how you really align that head and that heart. So that's what we want you to know. Please take it and run with it. Martin, it's a 12-week program. We have weekly calls, and then you also have a call with every single coach. So you really get over 16 hours because of instruction and conversation with us. So we're going to build on a lot of these themes that we discussed tonight and yesterday, and then on Tuesday as well. So with that, I'm going to open up the floor. You're welcome. If anybody has any questions, please ask. Otherwise, we very much appreciate you guys joining us, and we wish you guys a great night.